red, yellow, and blue, your three primary colors. A white for lightening your color and also dulling it just a little bit, and a brown for darkening your colors and dulling it. So red, yellow, blue. I didn't point those. Red, yellow, blue, white, and brown. So those are the colors that you need. As long as you have those colors, you are fine and you can take my class. Now, I also have a cup of water. I have two paintbrushes. I have a round brush and what's called a filbert, which is a flat brush with this rounded top like that. Sometimes you will see these called a wash brush. The sizes that I'm using today are a 6, and this is a 3/4 wash brush, but it's about a 10 or a 12 in filbert. You need some kind of palette knife or plastic knife, something that you can mix your paints with, and a palette or a sheet of palette paper that you can mix your paints on. A canvas. Now I'm using canvas board. As you can see, it's very thin. These are very inexpensive. In fact, I think I got this pack at Walmart. So you do not, they're not difficult to find at all. Any craft store or, like I said, Walmart has them. You probably could get them from Amazon. I'm not really sure, but I'm you know, that kind of thing is something you could find on there. I use a 9x12 size, and I think that's everything. I think we can go ahead and get started. Like I said earlier, I do use paper towels. I'll go ahead and get a couple of those. Now, as I mentioned, I have water, but you can also use something called a matte medium, and this basically acts like water in that it thins your color, but it does not, it's not as quite as runny as water. It's a little bit thicker. So, and it is still matte. It doesn't make it shiny. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and get started. And yeah, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask me in chat. I do have a Discord channel. Let me just bring that up so you can see. I do have a Discord channel that you can post your artwork on. I also post the reference drawing of whatever, or painting of whatever we're doing. So today's painting is a snowman with a little bird. And the name of the painting is actually Hello Friend. And that picture is available on the Discord channel. So if you want to log in using this, everyone is welcome to join. Like I said, you will be able to post your own artwork and we can discuss it and you can get personalized feedback from me. So I'll go ahead and leave that up for a little bit just so you have it. It doesn't seem like it's really in the way, so I should be okay to leave it up for the rest of the time. But here we go. So, all right. I pre-write my lesson plans ahead of time, and this one, the writing's a little small, so I gotta be that old lady and wear my glasses. So first thing is we are going to be using let's see, our oval wash brush or filbert, and we're going to be using blue, a little bit of red, and a little bit of the brown. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to measure these out in parts. So we'll have 2 parts. So I do 2 like little dots of paint. Two parts of the blue, 1 part of the red. And then, I guess what I would call half a part of the brown. Okay, struggling to put the cap back on. Okay, so the brown is just a little bit. What this does, this creates a very dark color, almost like a black. It's just a very, very dark brown. So I'm going to go ahead and get some of this from the outside that got over and just mix. So what you end up getting is, like I said, it's going to look almost black. And in fact, this is a really great way that throughout my classes we'll be mixing the actual color black, like when we use that. That's how close it is. Okay, so I wiped most of my paint off of my palette knife, and I'm going to go ahead and wipe the rest of it off because you don't want to have to wipe dried paint off of your knife. So go ahead and set that to the side. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we are going to paint the bottom of our page, which is the ground. Well, really it's the foreground, but I mean the ground, like the dirt ground. But in the picture it's the foreground, so I didn't want to confuse you with that. Let's go ahead, wet our paintbrush. Now the best way to do that, you put your paintbrush in and you just push it down side to side. And what that does is it gets water in the bristles, and then I just lightly wipe my brush on the side of the cup. I'm going to go ahead and I pull from the side. I don't ever go dip straight down in the middle because that's how you get paint going up into the top of your brush, and that's how it gets stuck up in here, and it can loosen the bristles and your paintbrush falls apart and all kinds of fun stuff. All right, so I'm just going to start making like a swooping kind of smiley face. And you can see there's still a lot of blue in that because remember we put 2 parts blue. Now if you are doing this on a table, you may want to protect your table. I don't have anything down on my table because this table is strictly for art, so I just don't worry about it that much. But it is a good idea if you're using just your regular table at home. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to get a little bit more water on there. Let's come up to about halfway. So I'm still doing my scooping and making kind of a smiley face motion with my brush. But I'm going to try to come up to the middle just a little bit. Anytime you see little bits of white, where basically you can still see your canvas through the paint, it generally means that it's just not spreading enough. So that's when you would want to add either more of the Liquitex matte medium or the or water. Or you can just add a little bit more paint. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just adding a little bit more paint to it, directly to those areas. Now, you may not be able to see that from where you, from the height of the camera. But see, the more I do this, see how you can really see the white through that? That's called dry brushing. It just means that you don't have enough water. Or, like I said, the matte medium if that's what you're using. And see how it spreads with a little bit of water. It spreads so much more smoothly. Now sometimes dry brushing is an effect that we want. Where we want to catch it so that we can still see some of the stuff behind it. Trees are a good example. it to have like a light, airy touch. That's what dry brushing is good for. In this particular case, though, we want it to be covered. Coverage is key today. At least for this first part. We will be doing some tree branches later, so we might end up doing a little dry brushing. You never know. Okay, finishing up here. Oh, I thought I had enough, just a tiny bit more. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Got my scoop. Yeah, well, all right. Hold my canvas board in place. So I chose to use a canvas board because I've actually taught this class, this particular snowman class, twice before, and I've always done it on a regular canvas. So I thought, well, you know what, today I want to try a canvas board. So you can use either. It's about the same. With the canvas, you do have a little bit of give because it's the material pushes into the frame behind it. So this, of course, is hard. You know, there's no give at all. But I like working with either of them. The only thing I have not liked when it comes to working with acrylic paints is the sometimes you buy kits and they'll come with a piece of paint paper, and it's basically like it's almost like cardstock, like a thick piece of cardboard that has the canvas surface on the front. So it's kind of like the canvas board, but it's more flexible because it's got that cardboard type quality. And I do not like those at all. In fact, I taught one class with it one time to try it out, and I ended up throwing that painting away. It was so awful. Like, I mean, it was definitely the worst experience. And the students used it too because it came with their kit, and that's why I was using it. Was just to test it out, and I think nobody really left happy about their painting that day. So I do not recommend that. I do recommend either a canvas board or an actual canvas. So I'm rinsing my brush, and again, you just kind of act like you're painting the bottom of the cup, and that's how you really get the paint off. You bring it up and get all the extra off, the extra water, and then I go ahead and put it in my napkin there, or paper towel. All right. Now we're going to do the sky. I think for the sky, I want to add just a little bit more blue to our mixture. Same mixture, actually, but I'm just going to add a little bit more blue. Okay. So now I'm going to mix this up. Okay. Okay, the second thing we're going to do before we start painting. All right, I got most of the paint off. There's a little bit left, but I'm going to wipe that off. Get that nice and clean. We're going to put a little bit of white in one of our wells. And get that ready because we're going to be using that more in this particular part of the painting. Okay, So same thing. We're going to get a little water on our brush. And we're going to start with that blue that we just made, painting up at the top. So I'm holding my canvas board in place. This isn't as much of an issue with regular canvas, but all right, so for some reason there's some kind of tilt on my desk, probably because it's an old computer desk that I've kind of converted into using for art projects. I do actually have a couple monitors on here in the background. You can't see them, obviously. And I think it's just kind of buckled over time. I'm not sure why, because I've never had anything directly in the center, even when I use it as a computer desk. Except maybe my keyboard, but keyboards aren't really heavy enough to do that, right? And it's not that cheaply made. So I'm painting right up to the line, and you can even go over a little bit. Don't forget to get a little bit more water. So the good news, and I'm hoping that this continues this way and that I don't see too many problems, but in previous streams, I had, I'm still learning all of this. I'm still getting the hang of doing live videos and just videos in general, and things like frame rate and bit rate and stuff like that. I'm still learning. So I had the settings I had it on before created an issue because of I live out in the country, and so there's not the greatest quality of internet out here. And so my past several streams have had, well, there we go. Of course, because I'm talking about it, it turns red. But my past several streams have had lag issues. Now, it's not too bad because you're watching what I'm doing here. Hopefully, you're not really watching my face, because that's where it's most noticeable, is that you see where my face will pause and lag. My voice doesn't lag at all, so that's been good. But anyway, so I messed around a little bit with the settings. I have a little bit lower frame rate. I actually increased my bit rate a little bit to hopefully help some of the image quality. So we'll just see. I tried to run a test of it earlier, and I don't really know how successful it was, so I had trouble with the test. So. But it seems like it's okay. It seems like I'm mostly green. The software that I'm using for streaming gives me a little green light, yellow light, red light to tell me how good everything's occurring, how good the quality is. And it's been mostly green, so good news. All right, now I'm getting up towards the top. All right. Now what we're going to do, you don't need to wash your brush off. I'm just going to dip it right at the edge of that white paint, starting from the middle. I'm going to just start mixing it in a circular motion. And see how it's already mixing with that blue. So I'm just going to keep making a circular motion. You can get your brush wet a little bit if you need to. That helps move it around a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to dip it in some more white. what's going to happen is we're going to do a gradient, meaning we're going to go from a dark value to a light value. So our dark value is going to be on the outside and our light value is going to be on the inside. So you can just keep picking up more white paint, putting it in the middle, and then gradually moving it out. Again, get a little water if you need to. Since you've got a lot of paint on your brush, you can just tap your brush on the side, and that will get some of the excess water off. If you don't want to wipe paint on the side of your cup, understandable. And when I teach these classes live, I use little styrofoam cups that I just reuse over and over and over again, or plastic cups sometimes, but usually this is styrofoam because they're white and it makes it easy to see the paint, the color of the water. So I'm just brushing all the way out to the almost to the outside. I'm going to leave a little bit of dark up here in the corner. I'm going to get a little more white right in that center. We're going to get the center pretty light, so keep that in mind. But I like to work in layers and just gradually work out. If you ask any of the people I went to art school with, I'm kind of the queen of gradients. I do a lot of gradients. Okay, get some more white. Put it directly in the center. And I'm just continuing to work this until I get it the way I like it. Now, I'm looking back at the reference photo. What this is going to do, this gradient that we're creating, getting a little more water, is this is going to create like a background for the snowman that's going to be painted on the foreground. And it just creates visual interest because it shows that the it shows kind of a nothingness in the background by having this. And it sort of outlines the snowman a little bit more. You'll see as we put the snowman on the foreground what it does. Okay. Okay. I'm going to actually get some of the paint off of my brush. And then I'm going to come in from the outside out here. Because I don't want it to be too much lighter up there, but every time I go out, it's adding more lightness. So the best way to do that is just clean your brush. and then go back over it. All right, now just a little bit more white right in the middle. And then we'll be done with this section. Now right now you see how that looks like kind of a blob that has a definite outline. We are going to clean that up by just brushing it into the area around it. Clean my brush off. I'm actually wiping the water off, and then I'm just going to come in here and just lightly go over right where the edges of each circle looking object hits the next color, so, or the next shade. So where, for example, here I've got an area that is it just wasn't blended very well. I'm just going to come in here with a relatively dry brush, a dry clean brush, and blend it. This is called feathering. So I'm going to do that right here in this middle section because that is very bright. When you're doing this with a lot of paint, it muddies the brush very quickly, so you have to continually wash it off. Okay. And I did put a lot of white paint down here. Okay. I think that's about as good as I can do right now. I'm going to do one more pass at the right side here. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, we need to let this dry a little bit before we put our snowman on. So, we are going to just have a little chat here. About the structure of this painting. Okay, so what's going to be happening, we're going to put our snowman right here in the foreground. And we're going to start creating, so we'll put the shape down first, then we're going to create some shadow. Then we're going to create like snow in the foreground. Let's see, our snowman's going to have like a little hat and a scarf. So we'll be putting those on. We've got a tree that we're going to be doing in the foreground. And that the tree is going to be kind of on the right side, coming into the painting from the right side. So we won't actually see the tree itself. We'll just see the branches of the tree. So that's the basic layout of what we're going to do. Still waiting for everything to dry. There's not really okay, that's not true. There are ways that you can speed this up. You can use a hairdryer. You can use, there's like a tool that you can use for shrink wrapping. It's pretty much like a hairdryer. I use that for drying acrylic paint. I don't know, there's several ways to dry. And actually, what I might do is temporarily, I'm going to go ahead and, well, let's see. Let's see if anybody has any questions. Well, it looks like maybe nobody is in chat today, so I don't really have any way to answer questions. I will drink a little bit of water. we can talk a little bit about contrast and how what we're doing here by creating this area here, that creates a contrast with the ground. But of course, we're going to be putting snow on the ground later. So we actually are going to end up, by the time this is over, with less contrast from the snowman to the background and foreground. But what that's going to do is make the hat and scarf that are, have a lot of color. They're going to be like kind of a gray and red. Those will be more contrasting because of the fact that everything else in the background is sort of similar shades. So the same thing, it'll make the bird in the tree, like we're going to have like a little bird like right about there, is going to be looking at the snowman, and that will make that stand out even more. Funny story about the little bird. So as I mentioned earlier, I have taught this class 2 different occasions, different years, so it wasn't like one right after the other, but both times I missed the bird. So, meaning I didn't write it into my lesson plan. So I looked at the reference photo, but didn't add the bird to it. So it does make the bird stand out, but even then it can be missed. So, it happens to the best of us. But let's see how this is doing. I still see some shininess, and when it's shiny, that means that it is not dry yet. So I'm going to go and dry this just a little bit with a hair dryer because I want to go ahead and get moving. So I'm going to give you guys a be right back screen, and I will be right back. Hey everyone, I'm back. So thank you for patiently waiting while I went and dried this. It's still a little bit tacky, but it's dry enough where I can paint directly on it. And that's key because what we're going to be painting on it is pure white. So we don't want it to mix with our background in any way because this is the figure, which is the snowman. Okay. So back to my grandma glasses. All right, so now I have this white in here, but it has blue mixed in it because of how I was doing. So I'm going to actually start a new well of white because I don't want any blue mixed in there. Now later we're going to be mixing a shadow shade, which will be like a grayish color. So we may use that well again. But for now, I just want pure white. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use my round brush. I'm going to get that wet. Now something I noticed is my water is very blue. So that shouldn't affect my paint too much, but just be aware of that. Be aware of how saturated your water is with paint. All right. All right, right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bottom of my snowman. And the middle, like the right side of the snowman is approximately the middle. Maybe it's a little over, a little to the right of the middle of your canvas. Now I gave it a little bit of a flat bottom rather than a rounded bottom because it is sitting on the ground. And if you look in the reference photo, you'll see that it comes up just above where the background and the foreground meet. Curves in a little bit. Getting just a tiny bit of water on there. That did have some blue on it, but I'm not seeing it. So that's good. Okay, let's see. For the body, now the right side comes up like basically what you would have sort of if a snowman had hips. That's where it would be. The right side comes up a little higher, and then the right side of the upper part of the body is a little smaller. Okay. Now I'm going to, you can use water, but since my water is pretty dirty and I don't want to have to go get more water, I'm going to actually use my matte medium to wet this a little bit. You could go and get clean water, and that clean water will enable you to water down your paint just a little bit so that it's not quite going on quite so thick. It is going on like I'm dry brushing, and I don't want to be dry brushing right now. As I explained earlier, I want it to be a little smooth. So I'm using the matte medium for this. If you have matte medium, you can use it for that too. All right, so now I'm going to put, this is like where the scarf is here. So I'm going to go ahead and paint that white, because even though acrylic paints do paint over each other, if you've ever tried to paint a room a lighter color than what's currently there, you know that one coat, and sometimes even two coats, isn't enough to cover it up. So I've learned a little trick. That is why you use primer, because primer is usually a gray or a white that you put on. Basically turn it back into a white surface. That is the trick to painting a room. So then you only really have to do, well, you might still have to do 3 coats. It depends on the color you're trying to paint, but you usually only have to do 1 coat after the white. And it's more precise color. All right, so I've got the scarf on there, and I'm going to paint the head. My head looks very ET shaped right now. So I've got to round that out a little bit more. You know, ET has that kind of wide, squat face. Okay. A couple things. So I'm going to go ahead and paint in my snowman. We'll do that first. But then we are going to add our hat and the remainder of our scarf that's kind of flying off because of, I would assume, wind. All right. Just getting all of the snowman covered. I probably don't need to be as exact as I'm trying to be here with the back side here, because that's where our shadow is going to be. Because technically that bright spot in the center here is our light source. It's like a mystical light source. I mean, it's not really a real light source, but nevertheless, that's what it is. Okay. Getting close. I'm just kind of fine-tuning my outside line here so that it's the shape that I want it to be. You know, it's just slightly not the shape I wanted it to be, so I'm just pulling that out. Okay. Pretty good. Pretty good. It's okay. Some of this we'll be able to fix later. Like I said, this back side's going to have shadow on it, so I probably don't need to be as precise as I am being. Okay, so I'm going to come back up here to the head, and I'm going to paint it again, just to really make sure that I got my white completely covered. Okay, now we're going to add, from the back of the snowman, we're going to have a little part, a little line that kind of comes out Okay, so it's going to kind of come out this way, and I'm just going to do some really light lines that are like the fringe of the scarf. Okay, and then we're going to come down. Oh, I got a little paint on me. You want to make sure you don't get any on your hand, because then you can sit it down somewhere else and it will place paint where you do not want it to place paint. So I'm going to do another line coming from the scarf. It comes out a little farther. And again, I didn't point this out, but there's a little bit of a triangular shape. It's a very, very narrow triangle, but there is a triangular shape because you know how it gets bunched up where it's tied around the neck, so that when it comes out, it looks like it's coming out like that, kind of at an angle. It's like it's getting bigger. Okay, now I'm going to do some little fringe lines. And these don't have to be exact. I mean, mine aren't even all right, that's pretty good. All right, now we're going to do a hat. A hat. He's got to have a little hat. So on top of the head, starting in the back, we're going to have like the rim of his hat, because he's wearing like a toboggan. Kind of hat. In the front, pull that rim there. So you can see the rim. Let's see, I want this to go down into my snowman a little bit. Okay, now we're going to do a dome, a large dome. And it's not going to go all the way to the outer edge of the brim, so the brim stands out. I'm refining it as I look at the reference image and see. So I hope everyone's had a good week. Mine has been very interesting. I've met a lot of cool people this week. All right. And then he's got a little poof on the top. Yep, that's it. Okay, now I'm gonna clean my brush off. Oh, I just got a little bit of water on my canvas, which in watercolor would be devastating because it would immediately resaturate the watercolor, and we would have to do some playing around. In acrylic, it's not so bad. As long as your paint's dry, it's not too bad. And my paint's mostly dry. There is a little spot here, but we'll be putting like some snowflakes and stuff in the background later, so that's not too bad. Okay. Now we're going to do the shadow on the left-hand side of the snowman. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually mix this shadow color. I'm going to go back to this white that I had before that had like the blue mixed in. I'm going to actually pick up a little bit of my blue. And I'm going to add just a tiny bit, not a lot, but just a tiny bit of brown, and that muddies it a little bit. It's going to make it just a tiny bit gray. I know that seems counterintuitive that brown would make gray, but it does. It just muddies it. Might have to pick up a little bit more white in here. Oh no, that's not too bad. See how I got this kind of greenish gray color. I told you brown makes gray. When you mix brown with either blue or red, it muddies it enough to where it starts looking more like a gray tone. which is like a tinted gray tone. So this is a blue tinted. It's a little bit green too because burnt umber has some yellow in it. Okay. So I'm going to additionally add a little bit of the matte medium to that. If you have, well, it doesn't even matter if you have clean water. At this point, you can use your water. I could have used my water because it doesn't have to be clean for these purposes. All right. That's just to make it where it's easier to move around. So let's see. I'm going to use this old napkin to... Okay. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be putting our shadow in on the left side. Now, we're not going to come all the way in. In fact, even though I added matte medium to this, I really could still wet my brush to make it a little smoother. Okay, now the way shadows work is they, especially with a round object, they curve under the object a little bit. And instead of just doing a straight up and down line, I'm going to actually paint so that I'm coming in towards the center. And this is going to give it like a rounded appearance. It's going to come in a little bit more here, right at the waistline, because that's another rounded area. And then it's going to pretty drastically narrow towards the top of the snowman. Okay, I'm going to pick up just a little bit of dark on my brush and just brush it along the outside, and that just gives a little bit extra appearance of the fact that it's curving towards the back. I'm going to do this down at the bottom as well. So I just bring in a dark line from my blue, and then you pick up some more of your, if you have to, if it's not still wet, some more of your shadow color and just blend it. And that just gives it the appearance that it's going back into space. Need a little bit down here. Another thing that this is called is that we're basically blending on canvas in the painting. Instead of mixing it over here on the palette, we're actually mixing on the painting itself. I don't always recommend it. Like, I think that there is something to mixing your color separately, but it can be quite effective when you're trying to get a gradual gradient, kind of like we did with the white earlier. We just mixed it right on the canvas. So down here there's a lot more of that dark color, but because it's the very bottom of the snowman. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush off. And we're going to pull in, go back and get our shadow color, and we're going to pull some in along the underneath of the scarf area. So we're just kind of outlining the scarf area. Now it's going to gradually get thinner as it goes to the right side of the scarf. and then on the side of our head. Now this won't be as thick of a line, and we're going to pull in just a little bit, so you barely need to touch your canvas. Just a thin line, maybe just a little bit over here on the right side. But then it gets a little thicker towards the actual side of the head, and then it thins out again as it goes underneath. The line thins out. I'm going to make sure I clarified that because we were talking about thinning the paint earlier, so it's the line. All right. All right, I'm going to come in, get a little bit of white on my brush and a little bit of that lighter color, and then I'm going to come on the right side of my shadow all the way down. So a little bit more white because I think I picked up too much of my dark color. And this is going to blend that shadow. Oh, too much. Let's get some more dark color in there. Oops. Man, I really picked up a lot of dark color that time, so I'm just going to have to come in with even more white to balance the dark color that I just... We're basically just making an even lighter shade of the dark color that's going to help us transition our shadow a little bit to the snowman, so it's not quite such a harsh light. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush here. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the dark color because over here I'd lost some of my shadow. I want to get that back. In fact, I might pick up a little bit of my dark color again. Rinse my brush. Pick up some more of my shadow color. A lot of times in painting, you're going back and forth. And that's okay. You know, maybe you do something like I just did, where I just sort of overstepped the boundaries of the shadow color with when I was lightening it. And that happens. So I'm going to come in with just some pure white right on the outside here. This I'm bringing even farther in, and I'm just letting it slightly touch my color, so that way it does pull some of it in, but not very much. Grab a little white. Oh, it looks like I got some blue over here, so we'll just paint right over that. I don't know what happened there. It looks like I maybe had it on the side of my hand. See, I told you, you got to watch that. Okay, get a little white. I'm going to try to blend this even more up at the top here in the face. And right at the edges here. This also, what this does is it effectively lightens the shadow a little bit too. So I'm just very, like, hardly touching the canvas with my paintbrush. And this is something that you'll get used to over time, is pressure. How much pressure to put on the canvas, so that you can get a small, like a very thin line, or so that you don't put very much color down, whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go in, I'm going to take some pure white, and on the right side, I'm just going to really come in here with the white to make sure it's going to create like a highlight, just to make sure that it's really saturated. Now, if you need to, you can put your painting sideways, so that you're coming, what's going to look like, because it's of the orientation, now it's going to look like the side, you're coming in from the top rather. Well, hello. So I have someone in chat. Trudy Ann, I must assume that this is my mother. So, hi, Mom. Thanks for supporting me. Don't embarrass me in chat. That's key. There's a lot more blue on that than I would have liked. Okay. We're not going to be working too much more with the white, so I'm not going to go change my water. So I'm just getting white on what's the right side of the snowman to make it look highlighted. And ta-da! Ta-da! So, or as I heard recently, a friend of mine says, ta-done, which I think is really funny. So, we're going to let that dry for a little bit, and we're going to work on the scarf area. Because remember, we laid out the white to be able to put the scarf down. So, first things first, we are going to do kind of a green color. So let's see. We'll go ahead and we're just going to do equal parts of blue and yellow. So I'm going to put, and you don't need much of it because our scarf is a very small area. So I barely just touched the palette. Oop, not wanting to close. So let's go ahead and mix a green color, which is just yellow and blue. That is a very, very green. That is more green than I want it to be. So I'm going to add just a tiny bit more blue. I probably just added a little bit too much yellow. I want this to be a darker green, like more of a gray green. an evergreen green, because we'll probably be using this same green later to make our leaves, our needles, our pine needles. Okay, that's still more green than I would like it to be. So I'm actually going to, let's see, what am I going to do? I think I'm going to brown it up just a little bit. Not much, but, well, if some of it would come off. Just a little bit of brown. And remember, what does the brown do? It darkens and grays, tones it down. So. Okay. So I'm just going to mix this a little bit of brown in. It's not going to be much, but it will be a noticeable difference once we put it down on the snowman. Okay. All right, I'm liking this color. I am going to go ahead and again add a little bit of my matte medium. If you have water, you can use water for that. Okay. Just get any extra green off. And I'm going to go ahead and wet my brush. All right. So let's go ahead and pick up some of this green, just a little bit on the edge of our brush. And I'm going to start with the cap. So the poof ball on the top of the cap is green. So just go ahead and paint the whole thing green. And then the brim of the hat is also all green. So you can go ahead and paint both of those, the whole thing, paint green. I fear my hat was a little misshapen. That's okay. Maybe my snowman has a misshapen head. You know, it's not perfect. Okay. Now, before this dries, I'm going to pick up just a tiny bit of white and mix it into the green. Same thing here, just at the edge, and I think unfortunately the top was already a little dry. And this creates a highlight. So because the top was already a little dry, I'm picking up green again and just blending it in. All that does is just create a little highlight. Okay, now I've got the dark green. So now I'm going to do the stripes. So I'm going to leave a white space there because there's a red stripe. And the stripes kind of curve out a little bit and get fatter towards the bottom. So they start kind of close at the top and then spread out a little bit. Now the one directly in the center doesn't spread out nearly as much as the other ones. All right, similar to what we did before, I'm just going to pick up just a tiny bit of white and just come in, just kind of on the, I mean, I'm barely even touching my paintbrush to the white, just enough to get some on there. Oops, that was a little bit more than I wanted. So I just clean my brush and then continue, and that just helps get extra off. Good. Good, good. At this point, I'm just being a perfectionist, but what I'm doing is on the brim part of it, I just kind of missed a spot. So you don't have to follow what I'm doing right this second. I just wanted to fix that. Okay. Now, in the back part, I'm going to actually pick up, I need to redo the green here in the back because it was dry already. I'm going to pick up just a tiny bit of my dark color and blend that in with the back. And that'll just give it a little bit of a shadow in the back. Okay. Now, we're going to do the stripes in the scarf. All right, so we're going to start on the very outside. We've got a green stripe on the outside. I'm trying to follow the curve of the scarf so that it looks like the green is part of that. Okay. I'm going to skip an area for my red, come in and do another green stripe. Okay. Skip another area. One more. All right, now I've got paint on my hand that is, you can see there, it's wanting to stick to the painting, so I've got to just kind of scrape a little bit of that off. So it stops doing that. Okay, so now we have, let's see, there's going to be a red, and then I'm going to have green. Determining how fat I want to make these. I'm just going to put a thin little block of color at the end there. Okay, then I need some of my, I'm just painting right over this white, like kind of every other one. The rest of it will be red. It's just indicating that there is green in that part of this, in the fringe. All right. Coming out now, you have to kind of consider that this part of the scarf is covering the back part. So I'm creating an edge there as if you don't see the bottom of this stripe because of the fact that this strip of scarf is covering. So just keep that in mind. Now I really hope that everybody is doing the paintings, or at least trying. I know it can be a little intimidating to start at first, but consider this. Nobody can see you. You don't have to share if you don't want to, although I encourage you to, because this is a very judgment-free zone. My Discord channel is. That no negative, if it's not constructive feedback, basically it won't be tolerated. So you don't have to fear that you're going to get made fun of or anything. But even if you don't want to share, I'm hoping that people will still do the work at home, because, it can be very rewarding to paint and draw, and there's nobody there to judge you. It's just you doing the painting or the drawing. So, and I've been trying to make it accessible by, like, when we draw, allowing for the use of just a number 2 pencil and a piece of white paper, so that as many people can join in as want to. And like I said, that this is in the hopes that, everybody will have access. Okay, so I'm putting a little bit of white in here. These have mostly dried already. I'm only doing this in the front of the scarf because the back of the scarf, we want it to look like it's going like away and back from the snowman. But I'm picking up, I put some white down, but since it's dry, I'm picking up a little green on my brush and just mixing it together right there on the canvas and creating my highlight. Well, that just covered that all the way. Okay, good. Now we can go ahead and add our red. So we're going to use straight red. So I'm just going to put some red down there. I'm going to mix a little bit of the matte medium in there. And actually, this is a pretty, well, no, I do want a bright red. I was thinking, do I really want this bright of a red? But I think I do. Because we want this to stand off the page. Remember, we were talking about contrast earlier. And this is going to create a lot of visual interest because of the contrast. All right. So I wet my brush just a little bit. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the red on my brush. And then we'll start in the hat. And I'm just doing my best to stay inside the lines. It is a very small area. That's why I like using a number 6 or a number 4 brush, because you can still get pretty small, but also cover larger areas if you need to as well. It's a pretty good medium size. Now for some reason, I don't know if it's because I mixed maybe a little too much matte medium, I'm already looking like I'm getting highlights in these. So I don't know if I need to add any highlights. I might. I might still do it just for you guys out there that did not mix too much matte medium. Now red and green, when you mix them together, now our green's already dry, so we don't have to worry about this, but they make brown. So if you accidentally paint a little bit over your green area, you'll see that it's just like a dark brownish color. Okay, I'm going to pick up just a tiny bit of white. Well, maybe. Put a little bit in each one. Just the first three, because the back one is going to be darker. Clean my brush and then come in here and blend it because it's still wet from us putting down the, so it's going to create like a little bit of a pinkish color. And that's okay. I'm actually going to come in with a little bit of the pure red again. And just come in on the left side to really emphasize the shaded side. Okay, now I'm going to pick up a little bit of that dark color for my last one, since it is more shaded. And I'm going to pick up a little bit. I cleaned my brush and I'm picking up some of my pure red to come in and blend those together. All right. I'm just coming in along the very, very edge. There we go. Okay, let us do the same thing we did for our scarf. Now, I accidentally put the green too far over, so I'm going to do a little bit of red there on the outside. Just because I don't want it to dry before I, well, it might be too wet to do it. Okay, we'll just keep moving on. Moving on, moving on. I think I really did mix too much matte medium earlier because it's flowing very smoothly, but I'm not able to manipulate it like I could if it was a little bit less liquidy. The more liquidy your paint is, you can't move it around in the same way. It's too fluid. It's a little bit like oil in a pan if you've ever cooked. You know, once it gets hot and it's more liquidy, which is called lower viscosity. Viscosity is how thick something is. So if it has a lower viscosity and it's more, you know, ooey gooey or less ooey gooey and more liquidy and moving around, it doesn't stick to your pan nearly as well as it did when it was more oily. This is a little the same way. Okay. Now I'm to my fringe. So I'm going to cover all the other areas that are not green. I need to make sure I cover in my red. So just do your best just to cover all the white areas that you see. If you miss a couple, it's okay. All right. So now we're going to do the back half of the scarf. Now today, I did not stop and do any breathing. We're already at an hour and a half in, and I didn't do any breathing exercises, mostly because I don't think a whole lot of people are with me today, but I just realized that that doesn't matter, because if you watch this later, you're still going to need to take just a little break. So as soon as I finish with this red, that's what we're going to do. Now, I wanted to get that white, because I do want to get the highlights. So that's probably way too much white. I'm just going to put a little bit of white, 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 white. And then I'm going to come in, pick up just a tiny bit of red, not much, and just blend that white. This is like a little too blended. That's what happens because my red is very liquidy. All of these problems because it's liquidy. Now I could fix that if I was doing a very large painting and I didn't want to keep having this problem. I could fix that by adding more paint to it. But since we're not going to be even using any more of the red, I'm not going to add more paint to that. I mean, to me, that's just wasting paint. So we're good. I think that's pretty good. Now, like I said, we are going to take just a little breather. I hadn't actually thought about the exercise that I wanted to do today. So we could just do a big stretch because that's what I feel like doing right now. Kind of a sun salutation that I'm not doing. Let's do that. Let's just do a little sun salutation. So I'm going to sit back. All I'm doing is I'm going to bring my arms up over my head. Let's see. I do want you to see me a little bit more, so I'm going to back up. Okay. So I'm going to bring my arms up over my head in like a prayer position and look up at your hands. And then you're going to bring them down to your chest. And then we'll do it again, okay? You breathe in through your nostril as we go up. You breathe out through your nostril as we bring the hands down to your heart center. Okay, so ready? You go. We're going to do this 3 times. So second one. Number 3. Very good. Thank you, everyone, for joining me in that little breathing exercise. I just like to, take a break, relax ourselves, relax our body and our mind, and prepare ourselves for the next part of the painting. It also doubles as a way for us to let our paint dry. So see, it's functional too. Okay. We are going to be putting just a little bit more. We're going to be using a little bit more of the red in the face of the snowman. Everything should be pretty dry by now. So we're going to mix. I'm just going to mix this in the middle. A little white. I got too much white on my brush. Just having some struggles today. And a little bit of red. We're just going to make a pink color. Okay. Now, once we have that pink color, we're going to come in and we're going to put just a little bit of pink on the cheeks. That might even be a little more pink than I wanted, but it's okay. We're going to blend it with some red. So now on the right side is going to be slightly smaller because it's going away from us. And I just accidentally painted on my white. So I got my brush wet. Luckily it's still wet, so you can pick it up with a clean brush. Okay. I'm going to pick up just a tiny bit of red and blend that in because I felt like my cheeks were just a little too pink. By the way, everyone, I've got my class calendar all the way up until February 14th. I know I mentioned that in my last stream, but I just wanted to let you know that I now have a link on my Twitch that says schedule, and that will be take you directly to the calendar. So that way you can look and see what classes are coming up. I've got images of everything and descriptions. So I'm just putting just a little bit of white right in the center there. Cleaning my brush and then blending. I know you're thinking, well, that looks just like it did before you added the red in there, Miss Sarah, but you know what? Trust me, I like the way it looks. Okay. Now, let's see. I think we're done with the red. No, we're not completely done with the red. So here's what I'm going to do. Instead of mixing this color in, because we're going to make just a tiny bit of orange for the nose. I'm just going to bring just a tiny bit of yellow. And I'm just going to pick up some red on my brush and mix it in. See if that works. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it did. All right. There we go. And get an orange. Okay. I've got too much paint on my brush. I probably should have just mixed that with the palette knife, but anyhow. So now I'm going to pick up this orange and I'm going to, let's see. Yeah, it's right about here. It's going to come across this cheek. So I'm going to just paint my little carrot nose. I'm just making a straight line. Now it's going to be a little thicker at the bottom here. But then as I get farther out, it's going to get thinner. Okay. I'm going slowly because I don't want to have this super thick line out at the end. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pick up a tiny bit of this green. I know that's a weird thing, but remember I said that green and red make brown. Well, green and orange kind of make a brown too. Not too much of one, but you know, if you think about it, it does have red mixed in there. So I just put a little bit of that at the end, and that's going to help be my shadow where the nose is stuck into the face. And pick up a little bit of orange and come in at the top here. liking that green. So I'm just bringing in a little bit of red, and that will just brown it up a little bit because it wasn't turning as brown as I wanted it to. Okay. All right, now we are going to pick up the dark color. And this is going to be our eyes. So we've got I'm thinking maybe I want to mix a little brown in here. I think I'm going to do that. So I'm going to stop. I think I want to make it just a little bit more seemingly black. And in order to do that, I've got to mix some brown in. So I'm just going to actually put a little bit of brown directly in the well. And just mix whatever color is left in here with the brown. And that's going to give me more of a black. Because I'm basically taking dark blue and darkening it even more so it makes it black. Yep. Okay. Wet my brush just a little bit. Pick up some of that color, and then now I can continue with the eye. So I'm just doing kind of a narrow bead, and everything is kind of tilting up because our snowman is going to be looking up at the bird in the tree. Now the right side, the eye is a little bigger. I mean, the left side. And then we have like our pieces of coal for the mouth. And our snowman's smiling because he's seeing a friend. And they get a little bit smaller as they go to the other side because it looks like they're going away from us. Okay. And we're going to take just a very, very tiny bit of white and just pop some right there in that eye. And it's not working because the paint's not dry yet, so hang on. Oh man, I've been dripping all over my canvas. I need to stop doing that. Pays to be careful. Try this again. Okay. All right, I managed to get it okay, but we probably should have let it dry a little bit longer. Okay. Take that same color. And we're going to give our snowman buttons. Okay. Okay. This time we're going to let them dry before putting any highlights on them. we can go ahead and pick up a little bit of white, just a tiny bit, and just very lightly touch it to our mouth. You know, something I kind of would like to do, I was just looking at this a minute ago. I kind of want to take this dark color that we have and come in here and just very lightly go over some of the color in the back where the back of our scarf is. Sorry. Struggling with words today again. Now I'm going to blend this. So I'm cleaning my brush. There's no wet paint there, but I hardly put any on there, so anything I do is going to blend it. Yeah. I'm going to kind of do the same thing, very right up underneath the jaw line. I'm just putting just a little bit. And maybe a little at the bottom to show that the scarf is going under. Okay, so wet my brush, dry it with my paper towel, and then blend. Yeah, I feel better about that. Okay. I'm looking to see if there's anywhere else. There is underneath the brim of our hat. We'll just very lightly come in. This, you know what, I don't even know if we have to blend it. I think it's fine just to leave it just the way it is. Yeah. Okay. All right, now we can pick up a little bit of our white and just come in just a little, hardly touching it. This is shiny coal. Okay, now we are going to do the arms of our snowman. So let's just take this dark color. We've got an arm, starts almost to the top, kind of the middle top. And I'm just doing like a squiggly line. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Well, I'm going to clean that here in a minute. In seconds even. So I'm doing another squiggly line, and at the end, I just kind of fan out. I'm going to grab this little part that I accidentally painted. There we go. Ruined my nice highlight. Well, that's okay. It's barely noticeable. All right. And then you have one that comes through the middle. Now we're just going to color it in with paint. Oh, I don't know if you saw my fairy lights came on behind me. I've got a very large mirror, like a leaning mirror, It's my favorite piece of furniture that I've ever owned. Goes everywhere with me. And it's funny because a lot of people have said, why don't you just get rid of that thing? It's just, you know, you're lugging it around. And nope. That was one of the first pieces of furniture I bought on my own as an adult. So it's not going anywhere. I should tell you something, that one of the first pieces of furniture I bought was a mirror. I should tell you how highly I think of myself. Not even a regular mirror, a giant mirror. It's like 4 feet by 7 feet. Okay, so I'm going to make the hands, the stick hands are going to be a little bit wider at the base. Okay. Now we're going to do the other side. So it's going to be at an angle. So we're going to come down to about where it would, like as if it were a straight line coming down this way. So this time I'm just going straight out, and then I'm going to do 2 little sticks that represent the arms. This one has a lot less detail. Okay. I think we're good. Now we can add just a tiny bit of highlight on top of these if we want, and I do want. So I'm putting a little bit of white up here, which is fine because it's also snowing. This one doesn't have as much in the back. I'm going to actually blend that in right away because it does have a highlight. However, it's in the shadowy part of the snowman, so we don't want it to be too bright of a highlight. Now the front part, it can be a much brighter highlight. So I don't have to blend this one as much. Just enough to like take the white out of it so it's not pure. That's good. That's good. Okay, now we are going to do the limbs of the tree because we're going to be using the same brown. And in fact, let's see. Yeah, that's good. All right, so I'm going to do a tree. Let's see. I want to make this so you can see this a little better since I'm coming around the outside. So I'm going to use a paper towel underneath so you can see the top there. Ta-da! Okay. And I've got water on my canvas. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down with a branch from the top. And I'm starting probably about, I would say just a little to the right of the center, like maybe an inch from the right from the center. So there's the center, maybe about right there. And I've got some dried paint on my brush that got stuck there. So I'm going to come down, just make a branch coming down, and then another branch coming to the side. And reading glasses are not good for this particular part because it's so, here, let me just move this up. Okay, that's really it. See if you can see that. Not terribly fancy. I might make it a little longer. Okay. My next one is going to come down from about halfway between where that branch was and this side of the page. And it's going to come down in kind of a squiggly manner. Also going, just mixing some water in there because it's starting to dry a little bit, so it's not moving the way I want it to. Okay, now this one I'm going to have a little branch come down that way. I'll have one maybe coming this way. Maybe one coming up that way. Okay, good. You can see all of that. All right. Now, halfway between there and there. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly halfway. You don't want it to look too terribly planned. I'm going to have another one coming down. This one's a little thicker at the top. And I don't want it to look too planned, so I'm trying to make it look like it's going into this branch a little and then coming down, because I don't want it to look like they're all the same shape. So this one is going to curve and go this way, and then okay. So there. So we're trying to make some realistic looking branches. Okay. Now from this branch, I'm just going to bring down another one that's going to go kind of straight down almost. And it's going to look like it's maybe even, let's see, I've got one piece that kind of comes out here and goes down. And then I've got another piece that's going like off the page. Then I've got another one that's coming down this way. It's going to come towards my snowman, and then I'll have another little piece going down towards the ground. Okay. Now please do not hesitate to ask questions if you have any. I will do my best to answer them. Let's see. I'm going to do one more little guy that's right about, it's a little to the left of half. And it's just going to, whoop, just curve down there. And that's it. So if you want to see that closer. All right. Now what we're going to do is take a little bit of our white, and just at the top of all of these branches, we're going to bring in some white. Now this is Bob Ross stuff right here, guys. This is the stuff that he does. Like, let's just put a little bit of white here and a little bit of white here, and all of a sudden, boom, it looks like, you know, this beautiful snowy day. Well, we're going to do it. Right this very moment, we're going to do it. I'm doing what's called dry brushing. I talked about this earlier. And that all that means is that I'm not really getting my brush wet first, so hence dry brushing. But also what it does effectively is it creates all these like little misses where it doesn't catch the canvas, and it just makes it look more realistic because it's not like this straight solid line of white. It's like a little, just to show you what's happening here. But see how dry brushing, because like, you know, it's not a solid line. It's only catching it in certain places. So when you look at it from kind of far away, it looks a lot more natural. I'm going to put a little bit more up here. Excuse me. Get a little drink of water here. Okay. Barely touching. Barely touching. Now here, on this branch that's coming down, we're not going to paint everything because the snow isn't going to be able to catch everywhere because of the fact that it's going down. So I'm going to do a little bit at the top here. I picked up a little hair or something on my brush. So a little there, and that's it. Okay, I feel pretty good about that. I'm going to also take a little bit of white and just, we have a little bird that's going to be sitting here right at the edge of this branch. And that's what the snowman's looking at. So we're just going to do two shapes. If you took my Raven class the other day, you know, it's a small oval shape and a larger oval shape. That's it. That's a bird. It's not that fancy. Okay. So just have a little space on there for where our bird's going to be. And we're going to let that dry because I'm going to be adding black to that. All right. Let's add some branches. We'll go ahead and take our green. First, what we're going to do is we're going to do some feathering of the green. Now, the green should not be dry yet if you put either water or matte medium in there. What we're going to do is come in. I'm just going to start at the top here and just do some, just to show you, just some branches that kind of come down and out. You can do some going the other way. Okay, oops. I don't know if I was holding that where you guys could see it, so I'll do it with the next one. So you've got some branches that are just kind of coming here, and then it's going to come out on the other side. Like that. Okay, so I'm just going to keep working at this. with evergreen trees, you have, I was saying branches, but they're needles. The needles kind of come out of everywhere. You know, there's no, like, it'll look like just a knot in the tree and needles are coming out of it. So. When you're doing trees, don't ever get too attached to any branches. Like, basically, if you make these beautiful branches, you're probably going to be painting over them at some point, so don't get too attached to them. I've done that before where I thought, oh, that's so perfect. I got this branch just looking really great. Yeah, well, paint over it. Okay, there's some little needles that come out past the little bird. Let's see, where else do we want to put some? We'll have some coming from here. These I'm going to put going behind that branch. I don't know why, but I want that branch to be coming in front. We'll have some just kind of coming from the side, the edge of the painting. That creates a little visual interest. Create some there. Create some here. And the way the needles kind of come all along the edges, almost like a palm tree, sort of, if you think about it. Some coming down this way. I'm going to do some coming out of the very side here, like there's something we can't see. Okay, now, once you have enough of those, we're going to come in and take our dark color. I'm not even cleaning my brush. We're going to come in and take our dark color and kind of go over those the best you can. So I'm just going right over those green needles that I just did with my dark color. Okay. We are almost done, guys. The only thing we have left to do after we paint the rest of these needles and our bird is we're going to create some highlight in the floor of the foreground, this area up here, which will also create our shadow of the snowman on the ground. So, and then that's it. And then we're done. And I'm being pretty sloppy about this. I'm like not trying at all to like stay in the lines or anything like that, or make like really thin lines. I'm just coming here. It's kind of going right on top of the green. Now normally you'd go the other way around, but because our scene is so dark, that's why we're going this way. That's why we're going light to dark. Normally you would put your dark down first in your needles or your branches, your leaves, and then you would come in later and do lighter color for your highlights. But like I said, because this is a fairly dark picture, we're doing the light first and then the dark. Okay. Pretty happy with that. I'm going to put a couple little red berries here and there. But these are not, don't worry, these are not going to stay this bright of red, because that would be ridiculous and it would take away from our cool little bird. That's why it would be ridiculous, because it would take away from, like, you know, the main part of our picture. But what we're going to do is I'm going to come in here with that dark color again. This dark color is really doing a lot for us, isn't it? And I'm just going to kind of put a little bit of that dark color right on top of where we did the red. And that just mutes it a little bit. There we go. Okay, now we need to finish our bird. So I do not have very much of this dark color left, but I am really going to try to make it stretch. If you don't, then what you're going to do, well, let's see. I'm just going to mix some because I really just don't have enough left. You mix a little bit of blue. We don't need much. With a little bit of red and a little bit of brown. Blue, red, and brown. That makes black. It's really purple and brown make black. Okay, so I'm putting a little bit of brown, and then I'm just going to pick up some red, since I have a good bit of that here. Pick up some red with my paintbrush and mix it. Now I probably will have to clean my brush off because I'm mixing with my brush. There's too much on the brush. That's called loading the brush. When you have too much paint on the brush, it's called loading the brush. And you don't want to do that. So I'm going to wipe it off first, and then I'm going to come in, pick up a little bit. And here's what I'm going to do. So the bird is going to have black around the head. So where it gives it the appearance that there's a white eye. It's not an eye. It's going to look like a spot around an eye, but you'll get the point. And then there's like a little point in the front that is going to be our bird beak. Okay. I didn't really have to clean my brush then, but I wanted to. I don't know why. Habit. Okay, I'm going to pick up a little bit more. The black is going to come down a little bit in the chest of the bird, like that. And then it's going to curve up and around to the back. And there's going to be, I'm going to bring another stripe down for its wing that is actually going to come farther off of the branch there. Now, this bird is much bigger than I wanted it to be. So I'm going to pick up some white and just make its belly bigger. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. Make its belly bigger. And I am going to take a little bit of this white too. I'm going to make its eye a tiny bit bigger. I'm hoping this is dry. Please be dry. Yay, it was dry. Or dry enough anyway. Okay. That's our little bird. Now, let's go ahead and get our big brush. We're almost done, guys. So all we're going to do now is basically create the shadow behind the snowman. And we're going to do that using, we're making like snowdrifts here. All right. Let's put the granny glasses back on. All right. Let's do this. We're going to create 2 layers here. Let's see. I'm actually going to just get some, I'm going to wet my brush and I'm just going to get some white on my brush. And then I'm going to come into this color we just made. And this is what I'm basically going to start painting some areas. So do this first. And you can see that sometimes the white comes through a little bit more. Now here's where you need to pay a little bit closer attention. First of all, I'm not going to come all the way down to the corners. I'm going to leave a little bit of the dark in the corners. I'm still doing this kind of swooping motion. Second, I'm not going to come all the way over to the other side of the snowman because there's shadow over here. So the shadow is going to start right about here underneath the snowman and kind of come straight out like that. So we don't want to go that far. Then in the background we'll have a little bit more where it picks up again. Okay. So right now I'm just kind of blending. All right. I think that maybe I didn't want to be as dark right here, so let's see if I have any of this left. Oh, just a little bit. Not much. I'm just dabbing at it. I don't know if I made that better or worse. I'm not entirely sure. I think it worse maybe. All right, well, we're just gonna suck it up, recognize and paint over it because recognize that I went a little bit farther than I wanted to, and that's okay. We'll make up for it. Okay, and I'm gonna try to come right to the edge here. It's okay, that's going to be covered with white, but that way it gives us a lighter background for our white. And I'm creating kind of a, instead of it being that pure curve, there's like a little bank there. Okay. I'm just going to very lightly come right up to the snowman. And I'm doing it lightly because it's got enough water in it that it's not saturating the area. And, oh, I like that color. I'm going to bring a little bit of, apparently some of the thicker color. I'm going to bring some of that into my shadow. Just a little bit. Because it's not perfectly dark back there. Not a lot, but a little. Okay, now cleaning my brush, and I'm picking up white with my brush, pure white. I'm going to come in and I'm going to paint in the direction that the snow is sitting. So right now it's going to be sitting kind of in a slope. Then up here it's going to be sitting more flat. down here. It's more flat again, like more horizontal. I need to add just a little bit more. If you have clean water, I would add clean water, but I don't have clean water. So I am adding more of my matte medium. Now I'm just mixing this with the back of my brush rather than getting out my palette knife. Okay, wipe that off. I just want it to be a little smoother than it is. It's going on. I'm not liking the dry brush effect that we were trying to get earlier with the pine needles. You don't want it with the snow. You don't not want it with the snow, I guess, but it's a personal preference. I don't want it. Now, I'm not completely covering all the way. I'm just going to come down just a little bit. Okay. Okay, now this time we aren't going to be going anywhere near the shadow. Well, I mean, I guess we're going kind of near it, but trying to be pretty careful. There's a little bit of shadow directly underneath the snowman. So I am dry brushing here because I don't mind that it's not covering, like, you know, that it's making it look more like it's creating a gradient. And I'm just going to swirl this around, back around towards the front. Towards the foreground. There we go. All right, there is a tiny, tiny bit of white back here. Okay. Now I'm not happy with my brush strokes in the front. There's a lot of rounded, like where the rounded part of the filbert has like created kind of a mark. So I'm going to just come in and just go horizontally, side to side. Side to side. Maybe even get a little bit of water, even though it's kind of blue water. It's okay. It'll take out some of that dry brush effect. There we go. That's smoothing it out a little bit. And what it's doing is it's creating some visual interest because it's pulling away the white in some places and blending it with that dark underneath and actually creating like a really interesting look. So I'm really glad I did that I got my brush wet. And I encourage you to try that as well. And just started painting on a little bit of water side to side. So I'm just letting my brush kind of go over a little bit. It's sort of going into the shadow, but I'm trying not to let it too much. Just enough to blend. Okay, almost done. We are like the finishing touches. And let's see, I'm actually going to take my round brush so that I can get a better point and come in here at the edge. Okay, one more thing. I almost completely forgot, but we're going to put a couple little snowflakes in the air, so we'll use our round brush for this, so I'm glad I picked that back up. Okay, so I'm just going to get some dots, and I'm going to just put random dots in the sky, including you want there to be some on your snowman so it looks more realistic, because I mean some of them would be right over and touching. And this is why earlier, and you have some little ones that you barely can see, like earlier I was saying it didn't matter so much if we messed up with when I dropped the water on there, that it was a tiny bit lighter because we were going to be doing snowflakes. So that just made it look like snowflakes in the background. So we got some snowflakes in here. I'm just kind of strategically placing these. I mean, I don't really know how strategic it is, but there. What this does actually by adding the snowflakes is it creates a little bit of visual interest, but believe it or not, it actually makes the scarf and the snowman, I mean the nose and eyes and everything, face of the snowman, stand out a little bit more. Now here, sometimes you want there to be a uniformity. Here, I'm purposely trying to be kind of random because, you know, snowflakes are random, but also if they were uniform, it wouldn't look right. Your mind's eye would tell you that something was off. Okay, I think this is good. I think we can call it. So I'm going to get, I did not bring it with me, I'm going to get like a little paint pen. I'm going to do silver. And sign it. So this is the finished piece. Now, I'm going to do a quick critique. I don't know how many people are watching, but I'm hoping that you join us in the... I left the Discord channel up at the bottom of the page. It is right there. I'm like, right there. You can join the channel and put your own artwork out there if you went with us today or if you have something else. I'm just going to do a quick critique of mine. What I like to do is I like to say at least one thing that I feel is very effective, and then one thing I feel is ineffective, and it depends on what you're going for in the painting. So we wanted a nice friendly painting that reflects kind of a happy quality. Okay, so, and we want it to be a semi-realistic snowy scene. So with that in mind, I'm looking at it, and what I think is most effective is the snow on the branches, and I actually think that this here, where I came in with the water, ended up being very effective because it made it look a lot more natural, which is one of the things we were going for. One thing I think I could improve, definitely the bird. I think that's just going to be touching it up a little bit to look more like the reference picture. But I could probably work on the shadow a little bit. I feel like it's a little dark. Like maybe I need to make a glaze or something to that's like a little bit lighter, grayish, to come over that. I think that that would make it look a little more realistic. I might pay closer attention to the shape of the hat next time, because I think that if it were a little more squat, it would be cuter, because cute was kind of what we were going for in this picture. Other than that, though, I think this is pretty good. I remembered the bird this time, so that's good. So hopefully you will join me in Discord. But if not, I want everybody to have a fantastic day, and I look forward to next time. Check out the schedule at the bottom of the page, and at the bottom of my Twitch page. There's a thing that will take you to the schedule so you can see what we'll be doing next time. See you next Tuesday.